Today we make a siyum on the third book. We make a conclusion on the third book of Tanya. I don't know if that means you can eat, it's 9 days, if you can eat meat as a result. But a siyum nonetheless, a conclusion. So first of all, for all those who've been with us throughout the book, it's a great accomplishment. And of course, once we finish one, we begin tomorrow the next. So, chapter 12, in conclusion, we are speaking about the joy that a person can have in doing tshuva tata, the lower level of tshuva. That means in ownership of what we've done wrong, we fix it, and yet, even after fixing something, we can still have the sins somewhere in our minds. Why would it be in our headspace at all if you've dealt with it and God has forgiven you? Well, as the author have explained yesterday, it's a way to keep us humble, not to get carried away with ourselves. Being, high and mighty in Hasidic terms is owning your stuff, dealing with what you need to deal with, fixing ourselves. And that could bring you to a sense of, being high and mighty. So we need to humble ourselves so we remember that, we have past iniquities. Furthermore, it'll bring us actually joy, the Alter Rebbe says. Why? Because when something comes our way, a suffering, whether it's at the hands of heaven or through another human being that embarrasses us, by way of example, we are able to recognize that this is a cleansing process, an atonement for past iniquity, for things that we've done in the past, that God is bringing from heaven. But it could be by agency of a human being, but it's still from heaven, in order to bring a greater cleansing. Now, the Alter Rebbe continues on this idea of cleansing, and that this is a great reason for joy, that when we have some kind of suffering of our physical body, of our physical existence, we have some kind of suffering that it could bring to joy. Why should it bring to joy? Well, again, the idea that it's a cleansing. All right. The Alter Rebbe goes further. And that cleansing, the fact that it's done now in this physical world, as opposed to after 120, before we go into Gan Eden, we also need a cleansing. Our soul will get into Gan Eden. Incidentally, this parenthetically, Alter Rebbe doesn't say that here, but we say Kaddish, the prayer for a deceased that is used for the deceased. And we say it only 11 months, not a full year, because the most that a person will need is 11 months, because we don't assume anybody is so evil that they need a full 12 months of the Kaddish that's being said in order to help their soul in its journey going through Gehenna, going through purgatory, going through the cleansing process in order to finally get into Gan Eden, into the Garden of Eden. So we assume that it's enough, the 11 months of that journey to get through, again, to have a cleansing of the soul. So the Alter Rebbe says that if you get pain in this world, it's cleansing in this world, and it's better to have the cleansing in this world than after our time in this world. Before our soul goes into, again, Garden of Eden, it needs to be cleansed. And he explains this idea based on Nachmanides. And Nachmanides writes about Job, who suffered for 70 years, that his suffering in this world for 70 years doesn't compare to 1 hour of suffering that the soul will endure after it finishes its time over here. And as he explains it, this is a world of kindness. So therefore, whatever kind of suffering we go over here alleviates so much of the suffering that will happen to us. Again, the cleansing that our soul needs to go through in order that it can have its final destination before Mashiach and the returning of the soul, but its final destination in Gan Eden. So it needs that cleansing. And the Alter Rebbe gives us a beautiful metaphor to understand this idea, that a little bit over here of suffering alleviates a lot over there after our time in this world. And the metaphor he uses is the sun and the shade that the sun produces down here. A shade, you know, if there's a tree and there's shade over here, right? It's going to move 6 inches, let's say. And that 6 inches it moves over here. How much did the sun move up above? Thousands of miles. What does that mean? It means a little bit over here is a lot of bit over there. That's a metaphor. And if we've learned that the whole world is only a metaphor, because the whole world is the world of God. That is, God animates it. So everything is a metaphor for us to understand in our connection to God and God's presence in different manners. So here we have a concept of down here, something that moves only 6 inches, but up there, the sun moves thousands of miles. This is a metaphor for us to understand on that something can happen down here that's a small little bit, but up there in the spiritual realm, it's a lot. And then the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Zohar that we bring an offering on the altar over here of a pigeon, a fowl, a meal offering of some flour, and that little thing has great ramifications in the spiritual world. An elevation of not just this world, but the effect on the spiritual realm is much greater than the small thing we're doing over here. Similarly, we do a mitzvah. We use a physical world like skin of a hide to make a parchment for a tefillin, for a mezuzah, and the like, or wool from sheep that we use for tzitzis. And it's a small little act that we perform over here. But the ramifications in the spiritual realm is so much greater. We don't sense it, we don't feel it, but that's the fact, that's the reality. It's a huge effect in the small little acts of mitzvahs that we do over here. Again, what's the metaphor? The sun moved thousands of miles up there, and here the shade only moved 6 inches, for example, right? And this is the idea, as our sages tell us, sanctify yourself over here and you shall be holy. In other words, do a little act of sanctification, a small little thing, right? That you did kind of push yourself a little act of holiness. Like, you know, you pushed off your eating a bit. A few minutes, 5 minutes even. It's a small little thing, big deal. The spiritual ramification above is abundant. It's amazing. And this is the idea of when we say in a blessing of a mitzvah, Asher Kiddushanu, that you have sanctified us in the mitzvah. How? That you've sanctified, that we are bound to the infinite through the physical act of doing a mitzvah. Again, a small little thing down here has a huge ramification up there. So that's the idea of reward and punishment. Amazing. That we get rewarded from a small little thing over here of putting on tefillin, putting on tzitzis, a wool garment, a small act of a insignificant act. It's not insignificant. The act obviously is very significant, meaning the act is not what's there involved in just putting on a garment on you, or wrapping yourself with tefillin, or taking a coin and giving to charity. The act is is a small, so to speak, gesture or a small performance of a material act in a physical world. But the ramifications of that on the spiritual realm is, again, 6 inches of movement of the shade over here. Up there means that the sun traveled thousands of miles. So we get that in the positive sense of the reward, likewise in the punishment. When we have something punishing in our lives here, down here, small little things, that we kvetch about, that, an inconvenience, something that we sigh about, that there's a physical representation in the physical body that when you sigh, that, there's a sense of suffering. You physically feel, and it might be a small little thing, right? Or it might be a larger thing, whatever it is. When we have the awareness, that small little suffering we go through here, or larger, is that 6 inches of movement over here that we did, but its ramification up there on the spiritual realm is infinitely beyond than what we have over here, so that little bit of suffering over here is going to spare us of a huge amount that could possibly when our soul leaves this world. Therefore, rejoice. Have that in mind. Be mindful of this fact, of this reality. And therefore, when something does happen, it's a kapara. It's an atonement. And you could smile. And you could be joyous, knowing that this is cleansing and atonement. And as a result, it's God's kindness that He's bestowed upon us. And if we appreciate that this is God's kindness, we will be joyous. And that itself is bringing us closer to God. That itself is tshuva, tashuv, to return to Hashem. And as the Rebbe concludes, the knowledge is elementary to the discerning. And those with intelligence in this manner will discover good. Because if you use your intelligence this way, then you will discover the good even in the troubling suffering that we go through ourselves. And of course, this is only towards ourselves. Someone else is suffering. We need to be empathetic and to feel their pain. That's a mitzvah. But to feel your own pain and say, woe is me. Oy, this is too painful. That's not a mitzvah. That's self-directed, self-indulgence. But someone else's pain and suffering, of course, that to be empathetic, to feel their pain, and to try to alleviate their pain, that's a mitzvah for us. Again, that's the paradox over here, that towards ourselves, we act one way, we're joyous in whatever challenge and difficulty and suffering comes our way. Someone else, we're pained by it. That's the Jewish way, very unique. All right. Do we have any questions here? Let's take a look. Any comments? Oh, Mazel Tov. We finished Book 3. Geras HaTshuva, the Epistle of Tshuva, Penitence, Tashuv Hey, to return the Hey. Chaya, welcome. Marta from Poland. Yes, right, we mentioned already. Alice from Baltimore. Anticipating Mashiach, absolutely. Pablo, thank you. The Torah Studies class is on Sundays. By the way, as I've mentioned before, folks, private message me your email so I could keep you posted of other things that are happening, other teachings, That would be wonderful. Una from Iowa. Andrew from New Jersey. Welcome. Angie from Jakarta. Jakarta. Thank you for joining. Jean from Colorado. Boker Tov. Rena also from Colorado. Welcome. Cindy from Florida. Boker Tov. And he says she's grateful for these classes. Thank you. I'm also very grateful that you join every day, you and everybody else, and are so dedicated. It is inspiring. It's definitely inspiring. Gotta say that. Batya and David from Montreal, good morning. Stephanie from Bloomington, Illinois, welcome. Diane from London, Ontario, fellow Canadian, good morning. Joseph from Fort Worth, Texas, thank you for joining. Margalazata from Poland, good afternoon. And Dennis from Tennessee, Pariba, Santos from Brazil. Yep, as Alice says, small step for man is a big step for spiritual kind. Yeah, very good. How will the reward and punishment work when Mashiach comes? Linda asks. Excellent question. Well, it won't be as it is now, where there's negativity, where there's darkness, where there is, iniquity that needs to be cleansed. Times of Mashiach, the spirit of impurity, of iniquity will be removed from the world, so there won't be any more. So then what's a reward and punishment? Excellent question. So reward and punishment will be in the positive realm of higher and higher or lower within good, within godliness, within being closer to God, more aware, different levels of perception and connection. So as today in exile, there's darkness and light, then there's different degrees of light. Not everybody will have the same awareness of it. By the way, I just want to tell you, if you're not sharing with your friends Tanya, what happens when Mashiach comes, they'll be part of Mashiach, the whole world, not just the Jewish world, but non-Jewish world too. But the perception of everybody, of God, godliness, goodness, will be different. Those who study Tanya now, those who study Chassidus now, will have a much deeper, profound connection. Those who don't won't have the same deep and profound connection. That's why it's so important to learn now. First of all, we pave the way for that reality. And not only we pave the way for that reality, we are already, on some level, living that reality, at least aware of it. And it says, Mashiach will come, we'll go, aha, ooh, ah. What was it? In other words, you're going to say, oh, yeah, that's what I learned. Ah, that's what I sensed that when I understood that concept. But now you're going to point with your finger and you're going to see it. It's going to be real. It won't be just a metaphor. It'll be the analog itself. So that's why how important it is to learn Tanya, to learn Chassidus now. So then the threshold of transformation is smaller, is lesser, and the experience then will be more profound and deeper. Because in godliness, there's levels upon levels. So do a favor to your friends and to all people. Share the Tanya. So that's how the reward and punishment will work then. Luanda, thank you. Omar, Adel, thank you. Russ, okay. Heather from Norwood, Connecticut. Dina from Brooklyn, shalom. Haiti from Tampa, Florida. Since there's, Denise is asking, very good. Since there are different levels of suffering in this world, are there different levels of spirit in the spiritual realm? Of course, righteous people are connected to the spiritual reality of their soul, and we're not so. Just, one example. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, Maud, Chana, the most painful thing I went through was giving the care of my autistic daughter to someone else, a group home, because this mama got too old to care for all her many aging needs. Now I know that was the best for both of us. Okay, very good. God bless you and her. Annette, thank you for watching from Montreal. Dina Shalom from Brooklyn. William from South Korea. All right, thank you everybody for the thank yous. The biggest thank you is that you're here. Actually, the biggest thank you is that you'll be here tomorrow. You're here today, you're here. The biggest thank you is you're here tomorrow. And together with that you share with others. And don't forget, folks, there's other good things happening. Private message me so I could, and give me your email so we could put you on an email list, keep you posted of many good things that are upcoming. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.